Hello, everybody. This is Sharonda again, and this is my YouTube channel, Spiritual Sense. And in this YouTube channel, I go over a variety of topics in regards to the supernatural, paranormal, and occult. And so I speak on a variety of topics in regards to this podcast and YouTube channel. I'd like to state that this YouTube channel is for entertainment purposes. If it just so happened to coincide with what you believe in, that may be by chance or even by happenstance, okay? So in this YouTube channel, I go over topics in regards to UFOs. I give my account on what I feel UFOs are, hauntings, curses, demonic possession, soul travel, astral projection, third eye opening, to name a few. And so I also speak on pagan belief systems and practices such as witchcraft, Wiccan, hoodooism, Satanism, voodooism, to name a few. And today I am going to touch on a topic, do an update on a topic that I recorded maybe 2 years ago now in regards to the mark of the beast. What is the mark of the beast? I like to state that I am not a biblical person. I do refer back to the text quite often when I do my podcast because this is Spiritual Sense, but I'm not religious affiliated. I consider myself to be spiritual or spiritualist. I feel like most people are psychic-like or intuitive. It's just all based on what information you're willing to accept, what you're receptive to, okay? So I pulled up some information. It says, what is the mark of the beast? And it says Revelation 13. So it's very extensive. And I'm going to read it. And then after I read it, I'm going to give you what my take is on the mark of the beast, okay? So it says, by way of reading the passage, it says, then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had two horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. It performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of people. And by the signs that it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Also, it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marred on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Revelation 13:11 through 18. Now it says a great beast. John sees a beast rising out of the sea, summoned by the dragon on the seashore, 12:17. The sea was a place of chaos, danger, and evil for the Hebrews. The vision draws on Daniel 7:3, where Daniel sees four great beasts out of the sea. The beasts in Daniel represent great empires, and a great empire, almost certainly Rome, is in John's mind as well. The kingdom rising out of the sea is not humane, civil, or supportive of its citizens. Instead, it is like a ravaging and ferocious beast preying on its citizens. The beast described here It's probably the fourth beast seen by Daniel. We have Daniel 7:7, 19 and 23. The beast in Revelation has extraordinary power, for it has 10 horns and 10 diadems. Revelation 17:12. Daniel 7:20 and 24. Symbols of ruling authority on its horns. It has 7 heads, also signifying its authority and power. The dragon has 7 heads and 10 horns, Revelation 12:3. And he clearly has given his authority to the beast. The beast with his horns and diadems, parodies to Christ, just as the dragon does. The 7 heads bear blasphemous names, which are perhaps Roman claims to deity, such as Lord, Son of God, and Savior. 17:3. Revealing again the divine pretensions of the beast. The beast is not confined to the Roman Empire. It refers to Rome, but applies also to every manifestation of evil in all governments throughout history, and also to the final conflict come at the end. The beast coming out of the sea is like a leopard, with feet like a bear and bears and a mouth like a lion's. In Daniel's vision of the 4 beasts, the first, Babylon, was like a lion with eagle's wings, Daniel 7:4. The second, Media-Persia, was like a bear, Daniel 7:5. And the third, probably Greece, was like a leopard, Daniel 7:6. John sees these beasts consummated in Daniel's 4th beast, which is the beast he describes here, Daniel 7:7, 19 and 23. This beast is not autonomous, but derives its totalitarian rule from the dragon, and thus its governing authority is demonic. Thessalonians 2:8 through 9. One of the heads of the beast had a mortal wound for which it recovered. Many understand this to refer to an individual, which is certainly possible. After Nero's death in AD 68, a tradition arose that he would return perhaps from Parthia and rule again. And John might have had that tradition in mind. But if John wrote in the 90s, his most plausible date, it is quite unlikely this tradition would be in mind, since Nero was long gone. It is more probable then that the reference is to the empire as a whole. The deadly wound signifies the apparent demise of tyrannical rule. Rome's dominion looks as if it has been dethroned and removed forever, and yet the empire is not destroyed. Just when it seems that its tyranny has ended, its power is resumed. The so-called death blow is ineffective. In response, the world is astonished with the beast and give its allegiance to him. For the revival of a demonic empire is a kind of resurrection. So once again, the beast parodies the Christ. Worship of the beast. The staying power of the beast and its empire leads to worship of the dragon and the beast. The dragon is worshipped for giving authority to the beast. The beast is worshipped because of his so-called resurrection. He is considered incomparable and omnipotent, like God. So it has Exodus 15:11, Psalms 89:7. People worship the beast, believing he cannot be resisted or overcome. As has often been observed in history, people support a winner. Twice in this verse, we are told what was given to the beast: a mouth to utter proud, blasphemous words, and authority for 42 months. The clause, it was given, appears 4 other times in this chapter: 13:7, 14, and 15. In the comment on 9:1, I defended the notion that God is the implied subject of this passive construction, although the dragon actively gives his authority to the beast. God reigns and rules over what the beast carries out, allowing or permitting the beast to exercise his authority. Even though God ordains what the beast does, he does not have the same motivation or intent as Satan. God's judgment is his strange work, Isaiah 28:21, and he calls on the wicked to repent and live, Ezekiel 18:23-32, while Satan rejoices when people are destroyed. The secret things belong to the Lord, Deuteronomy 29:29, and hence we cannot fully chart or explicate the logical relationship between divine sovereignty and human responsibility. The beast's opposition to God. The beast is full of himself, uttering haughty and blasphemous words against God, just as Antiochus V Epiphanes did in his day, functioning as a type of common beast, Daniel 7:8-20 and 20, chapter 11:36. Such activity fits also with the man of lawlessness, who exalted himself as divine. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2:3-4. The beast is allowed to exercise his authority for 42 months. Some understand this to be a literal 3.5 years before Jesus returns, but John is more likely describing the entire period between Jesus' first and second coming, Revelation 11:2. John wrote not of days far removed from his readers, but of the impact of the Roman Empire on them. All totalitarian governments arrogating to themselves divine authority revealed that they too are the beast. John focuses on the beast's opposition to God, drawing especially on Daniel. As in verse 5, the beast's self-exaltation expresses itself in his speech, which blasphemes God in his name. He follows the pattern of Antiochus V Epiphanes, and I may be mispronouncing these names, so do bear with me, of whom Daniel 7:25 says, he shall speak words against the Most High. The prophecy of Daniel chapter 11:36 is also fulfilled. He shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak astonishing things against the God of gods. The beast also reveals God's dwelling, those who dwell in heaven, Revelations 12:12. This is likely a reference to the people of God, 21:3, showing their true home in his heaven. The actions of the beast here accord with Daniel 7:25, where the beast opposes God and his people. The beast, harboring divine pretensions, hates anything and anyone devoted to the one true and living God. God reigns over the beast. Twice more we see what God has given the beast. First, God has allowed him to make war on the saints and conquer them. This does not mean the saints surrender their faith. It means God allowed the beast to take their lives. This too followed the pattern found in Daniel, where Daniel says about the Antiochus. This horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them. God grants the desires of the beast for a period of time, so that the beast exercises authority over every tribe, tongue, people, and nations. We see here the reach of the imperial cult and the totalitarian, 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 nature of the beast's rule, the beast's authority. The beast's authority and rule spark fear and admiration in those dwelling on earth, and they worship the beast. The verse reads as if everyone without exception worships the beast. But the phrase, all who dwell on earth, is a technical term in the Revelation for unbelievers, such as understanding earth dwellers as those with names not inscribed in the book of life. The book of life contains the names of those who would not perish in the lake of fire. Those who give their allegiance to the beast thereby demonstrate that they do not belong to the one true God. Most English translations refer to those written before the foundation of the world in the book of life. John makes a similar point in Revelation 17:8, where he refers to the dwellers of the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. The world order in 13:8 could suggest alternatively that John refers to the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Word order is not determinative and gives the parallels. John probably speaks of those who were inscribed in the book of life before history began. After all, the death of Christ was predetermined before history began. But it is quite another thing to say he was actually slain before the world began. For the lamb was slain in history, not before the world began. On the other hand, God decided before history began, he would be, who would be inscribed in the book of life. Ready yourselves. John reverts to the formula used in all 7 letters. Those who have ears should open their ears and heed what is being said. People are told in advance about the authority of the beast and his persecution and slaying of Christians. They are informed that unbelievers will give to the beast their worship and their adoration. Hence, believers must ready themselves. Some are destined for captivity, and into captivity they will go. Others are destined to be killed by the sword, and so it will be. Such events do not mean God has abandoned or forgotten about them. The power of the beast does not suggest God's sovereign rule over the world has been surrendered. For the beast exercises authority only by God's will. Hence, believers are called upon to persevere and remain faithful to their Lord. They must remain loyal despite the persecution and difficulties at hand. The next paragraph commences with John seeing another beast coming up from the earth. This other beast is elsewhere identified as the false prophet. The second beast then claims to speak for God and thus represent religious authority contrary to God's word and ways. If the first beast is the Roman Empire, the second beast is probably the imperial priesthood. Deceitfulness of the second beast is apparent. He has 2 horns like a lamb, thus presenting himself as being a accord with the lamb. But he actually speaks like the dragon, revealing his message to the demonic. Jesus himself warned that false prophets would come in sheep's clothing, while in fact being ravenous wolves. The second beast is the third member of the unholy Trinity, functioning like an unholy spirit. He exercised the authority of the first beast in his presence, compelling the inhabitants of the earth, all unbelievers, to worship the beast. Unbelievers are happy to comply, for the beast appear to have divine powers, recovering from a seemingly mortal wound. The beast, in other words, had his own version of the resurrection, just when totalitarian rule appeared to be squelched. It rose from the ashes to reign again. The plausibility of the second beast is augmented by its miraculous power. In other words, false religion seems to be verified empirically, just as Elijah could bring down the fire from heavens. So false religion here is allegedly confirmed by signs and wonders. Both Jesus and Paul taught that miracles would be accompanied by false Christ and prophets. Such miracles test believers, ascertaining their devotion to the Lord. These signs deceive the earth's dwellers, convincing them that the beast is worthy of worship and praise. Hence, the inhabitants of the earth make an image of the beast. Images was crafted for the sake of worship, and John reminds us again that the beast is worshipped because it seemed to be dead but sprung to life again. Image does not mean a literal image of the beast is made, but is John's apocalyptic and symbolic way of saying the beast is worship. Lived is used elsewhere of the resurrection of Christ, and the plural that came to life refers elsewhere to the spiritual or physical resurrections of believers. Unbelievers worship the beast because of its resurrection power, because the empire seems dead, but keeping springing back to life. The beast then is a parody and counterfeit of Christ. We see again the second beast function like the Holy Spirit, just as the Spirit came to glorify Jesus and anoint him with power, so the second beast honors and empowers the first. When John describes its granting life to the image of the beast, we should not envision an image literally coming to life. Instead, the point is the second beast empowering and supporting the first beast in its endeavors. The speech of the first beast seems supernatural, inspired, authoritative, compelling. He speaks in oracles, but this is not a matter merely of persuasion. Coercion is a staple of the second beast ministry, and those who refuse to worship the first beast are put to death. Similarly, Pliny writes to the Emperor Trajan about what to do with Christians who he ought not punish them if they sacrifice to the gods, but if they refuse, they are to be put to death. Such absolute allegiance was demanded also by Nubicius Nazar. I'm not able to pronounce a lot of names. I do apologize. Those who bow before the beast reveal they do not belong to the one true God. So it says the mark of the beast. The second beast also enforces the power of the first through economic discrimination. No one, no matter his social class or influence, will be able to buy or sell unless he has a mark upon the forehead or hand to signify devotion to the beast. The number signifies the name of the beast. Many interpreters take this literally, as if a literal mark will be imprinted in some fashion on foreheads and hands, but the language is likely symbolic. Just as the seal on the foreheads of the 144,000 is not literally, neither should this mark be understood literally. In any case, the two beasts conspire to exclude believers from the marketplace. John closes this section with a statement that has fascinated and puzzled interpreters throughout history. He summons the readers to be wise so they can calculate the number of the beast. We are told the number of it's the number of man, 666. Some manuscripts read 616, but the best reading is 666. If the number refers to a particular individual, the best number is Nero. If Nero Caesar is transliterated from Greek to Hebrew, the letters would calculate to 666, though it is doubtful and original audience would have understood this complex solution. Many wild speculations about the identity of the person have been promoted throughout history, and every guess has so far been wrong. The advantage of seeing a reference to Nero is that he fits the time period in which John wrote, at which time there was speculation and fear that Nero would return from Parthia after his death. Still, seeing a reference to Nero isn't easy or obvious, but one must transliterate from Greek to Hebrew to get the number 666, which seems like a stretch for the audience. Also, as noted earlier, the Revelation was written in the 90s. Fear of Nero's return would have lessened considerably by that time. Perhaps it is better to move a different direction, according to what it says. So it has one last paragraph, and then I'm going to proceed with what I believe the mark of the beast is. So it goes a little further about the number 777 representing perfection, but John says 666 is the number of man. The number 666 then represents that what is anti-God and anti-Christ. All that is in opposition to one true God. If 777 represents holiness and perfect goodness, then 666 signifies the enormity and totality of evil. Hence, John does not intend to point to any particular individual here. Rather, the kingdom of the beast is a human kingdom, an evil kingdom, instead of a divine one. The nature of humanity apart from God is demonic. The kingdom of the beast promises life and prosperity, but brings death, misery, and devastation. Okay. So I think that was a good article, and I'm also citing this article from ESV. It's expository commentary, Hebrews Revelation Volume 12. So I'm going to give my account on what that is, or what I feel that is. Number one, I don't feel as though I think in terms of, we all have common sense, common knowledge. I've said this before, most people do. I think by way of the Spirit, God will enlighten us the capabilities in our time and understanding in this physical, natural sense of it all. And what do I mean by that? So he would give you spiritual insight as to what is being done in terms of what it said. A lot of things are written and coded. Everybody's spirit is not of a good cause. And so you will have a mockery or a deception of certain spirits because he has these same spirits in his kingdom. And you have to see it in a different context to understand. Now, it mentioned about the totality. So without stepping on anyone's toes or offending anybody, I do feel as though there's a universal language. Non-verbally as well as verbally. Pain is a universal communication or language. We all feel pain. We all feel joy. But I'm talking in terms of one, because it is referencing a lot to that word totality. Okay, so do we want to say that across the board English is the hallmark language for all languages, and we speak it simply in dialect? Like when those who are different or not of our like mind come around and we're not trusting of them, do we speak in a different sense of the matter? because of when danger may arise or a threat may present itself. So is it honestly truly that we all speak one common language? And because there are different phases, as I mentioned, in regards to spirituality and the spiritual realm, when they begin to manifest and become inquisitive into our time and space, we would see it in terms of like jobs, like the things that we do here on earth. You know, me working in healthcare, we have a lot of jargon and the shorthand and abbreviation. And then if you go work over here as a police officer, you go work over here as a nurse, or you go work over here as a teacher or whatever. So it is kind of similar in a sense in terms of that spiritual realm as well, particularly when you speaking in terms of language. Like when the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, meaning when the enemy comes to put you out of a situation or to take you away from a situation, you want the enemy to be as confused as possible. And I think that's basically what it is saying when it keeps referring to totality. Like I honestly feel as though it's to come on one accord and one agreement, one standardized language, one standardized understanding. And anything that falls separately is operating out of a different spirit. And so now I'm going to get back in regards to when it mentions about the first beast and the second beast. So the first beast would be your old self, like who you are when you're ignorant. And when I say ignorant, meaning it is not to be taken in a negative connotation. What I mean is when you don't know. And once you have received that higher sensibility, it's the second understanding. Like the eyes has been opened as to how God happens and how things manifest and how the enemy seeks to steal, kill, and destroy. And you will see it in all sense of the matter. You will. And so that's what I feel that when it mentions about the first beast in the second, like my old self versus my new self. And that can go to in reference to the Old Testament in terms of the New Testament, like my old self versus my new self. When I became a woman, I put away childish things. When I was no longer a child, I put away what? Childish things. So it works the same way when you have attained higher sensibility and higher knowledge, the ability to understand and why there is standard and order, why things have to be standardized and why there has to be order. Because anything that operates out of order typically may be on a not of a good cause. He led me to understand that. Now, it mentions about worshiping the beast. So what is the beast? Well, what do we connotate a beast to be? And we associate a beast to be something that is malevolent, something that devours, destroys, or whatever the case may be. But in layman's terms, the beast can be a representation of adversities, strife, anything that could be unfavorable in your life, a car accident, losing your home, losing your job, losing your mind, anything to this of the nature of the sort. So when you are someone who, because things are expected to be standardized, however, we as people face, when, we as people, it's human nature to pay attention to face value. So because we are not standardized and we are in what, meshed or mixed up or a melting pot, then and only then will you have to tag certain individuals. So those who think in that matter or in that prejudice mindset, limited mindset, would know, okay, yes, I come from a background where everything was taught to be standardized, and anything that was contrary to what we associate as being right was wrong. So God has a way of tagging us. And many times you will notice by way of the prayers of people when they're not able to understand you, or you do things that is contrary to what they feel is kosher or right. So he has a way of illuminating things to people to where they would know the difference. And you would know who has that sensibility, because I kid you not, like with me, I have worked around many of different types of, ethnicities and types of personalities and such. And oftentimes God would tag people by way of their eyes. Like, it's something about the eyes, I kid you not. And you would know, okay, certain things are enhanced. Like he may enhance certain features about a person. They voice the dialect about them. It's something that you will be able to see that no other person may be able to see. And so this is basically what the mark of the beast is, meaning when someone is conditioned to think one way, kind of like a sore thumb, like if you stick out like a sore thumb, that's basically what the mark of the beast is. The mark of the beast is, in spiritual wise, is God giving you that discernment. He gives you that discernment as to, am I dealing with just a malevolent spirit or a mischievous spirit or demonic spirit? You will have that understanding as to what that is that you're dealing with. So that's basically what that is. He would tag them as such. He would tag them. And so you will begin to understand this person has no, you would know when a person doesn't have a clue, or when a person is very, very highly intelligent, they're out of place. When a person is well-versed versus when somebody just in here to cause chaos, strife, as such, you would know it. He would tag them as such. And I think it's similar to how they reference to back in the Holocaust days when they mentioned about the Scarlet Letter, or the Star of David, during those times where everybody had white skin, but you had certain individuals that was considered Jewish versus something else. And just because we look alike does not necessarily mean that we have the same cultures, beliefs, customs as the next person. And so to those who are conditioned to only see things and react, they had to protect themselves by way of symbolism. They had to protect themselves to let people know, okay, yes, of course my skin is white like you, and I may have dark features, but I am not like you. And this is why we have to have encoding systems and symbolism. And I think this is why across the board, they have chose to put certain individuals in certain regions and locations, particularly if they're being targeted because of something as merely as their background, So it also, in my conquest of receiving my spiritual awakening, The swastika, many people associate that with hate, rage, anger, and it may very well be, but it mentions to me it's just a cross that goes around in a circle. Turn it around. It's a cross going around in a circle, the Antichrist. That means we are against what this is. We are against what this is. We are backward. We are against what this is. This is spirits, plain and simple. And once you have gained that insight, once you have gained that knowledge, that insight, God is going to make it apparent to you that a lot of this life cycle, this journey, is a reenactment of spirits. You see some of the same similar things reenacted. And when they fall down, the only thing they know to do is fall down and suit in the same part, in that same mode, in that matter. That's how they are. They can't change if they want to. Most people refer that to being personality and stuff, but this is how spirit and spirituality works. And many of times people have a way of manipulating their exterior so they can deceive those spirits, and have them to pass over or pass by me. See, the mark of the beast in this time and space, well, we would know it, is being done by way of the healthcare. Anything could be the mark of the beast, to be honest with you, by way of the healthcare system right now, because this job is to steal, kill, and destroy. And you got many people that are aware of that and are against that, but you have many people who are aware of that, but they are okay. So the mark of the beast comes in all sense of the matter. It's a figure of speech. I think a lot of the text is merely to condition the mind to tell on the heart and the spirit of what you're dealing with, is what it is. That's basically what that is. I oftentimes when I'm sitting around and everything, I may listen to podcasts and episodes that I've done. And so I listened to a couple of the podcasts earlier, and the one that I did when I mentioned about Satanism. And I said, basically, my account on Satanism is, it is a test to see your intellect. It's a test of the intellect, of how these spirits operate. It's God showing you how spirits operate and how they think, and you will be put to the test to know as such. And it was, as I mentioned, that it was a passage here that I read when it was mentioned about false prophets and false doctrine and things of the sort, and would kind of like give you an insight as to what God is really conveying. I honestly feel as though a lot of these people in these biblical texts, if you begin to listen, I do feel as though a lot of them was named the names that we see here in the text. I also believe that under the guidance of his spirit and his cause, those who are conditioned to hear in a different way, it's a language that is understood but not spoken. And if you ask him for prompt understanding, he would give that to you. And so basically, in reference to getting back to what was occurring during the times of Jesus, I do feel as though it was to let you, make you aware as to authority and when you are out of place and out of line. When you are out of place and out of line, and when you are conditioned to think one way, and how he wants you to operate common sense in the matter. and to give understanding of how he works. Every battle is not meant to be fought, and sometimes it's not best to be right. And even though I got these so-called righteous or demonic people in place, they still are in place for a reason. And I think that his concept and his idea of what he thought he was brought here for was contrary, and I feel as though he felt foolish towards the end. I do. I feel like he felt foolish, hoodwinked, and saddled is what I felt. I do. And that goes to show you that favor, he would give favor to whom he chooses to give favor to. Plain and simple. And that it was to enlighten you about certain things that was actually going on with him and his posse or the disciples, and how he would use people to spread a message. So we like to think of things and as being, celestial and holy, and they didn't do no wrong, and they did some of the similar same things we do now. It was nothing perfect. Nothing was perfect. And the same way you see people showing each other now, talk about each other, go behind each other back, report each other, they did the same things then. Did the same things then. It wasn't nothing. A lot of that was sensationalized, and you will begin to understand that what the mark of the beast is. The mark of the beast is spiritually, in the spiritual sense of the matter. God will tag you to give you discernment and understanding as to who you could trust. He will do that. He will. He will enlighten you. He will enlighten you on things. You will go back, you'll begin to go back and watch programs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, listen to the songs of that time, and everything will come into focus, and it's like, when you go on a spiritual hiatus, he will speak to you in the past, the future, right here in the present. It's just something that you have to deal with. I mean, words just can't describe it. That's the only way I can explain it. And most people would say you crazy, you smoking too many cigarettes. That's just an excuse to distract you from what is relevant and what is true. I don't do any drugs. I don't barely even drink any alcohol. I don't do anything to the contrary. But he does enlighten me and give me insight on things. He does. And so that's what that is in terms of the mark of the beast. Now, in regards to, tagging on the forehead and then the right hand and all this other stuff, well, it does. And then this is another point. Is the beast actually that they speak of, is that actually Jesus? And what happened in terms of that whole empire? And they scorned him, and he was marked and put, and the cross is the actual mark. And that it is used as a symbolic, to deceive people, but those who are by spirit would subliminally know that if you do anything to the contrary, this is what's going to happen to you. Okay. And also making another point before I was beginning to make that point. In terms of false doctrine and false prophets and things of the sort, sometimes it's best to not be a know-it-all. Because what you'll begin to understand is when people feel as though you are not stupid, they will feel threatened and intimidated by you, and they will want to hear up and get you away from there. And sometimes they may even try to cause harm to you. They will. They will. But I wanted to bring up another point. It mentions about you will have the mark on your forehead or your right hand. Well, it says, there's a text where it mentions about don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. So in essence, what that means is those who are inclined and not stupid, they are aware of what you are doing. It's the point. Awareness. And when they become aware of what you were doing, you will be scorned as a scarlet letter as such. And they do it by way of place you into unfavorable job fields, perhaps spirit-related job fields or regions as such. So that's basically what that is, getting back to what I mentioned about the scarlet letter or the Star of David or whatever type of way to say, okay, these type of people or spirits are associated here because they all think in accordance to each other. And this is across the race line. This is across the regions as such, and they will try to gravitate them all in the same space. That's what that is. So that's why you have a lot of them try to scatter about, okay, well, if you're going to hit them, then you're going to hit us as well, so to speak. So you really have to be careful because a lot of these things that was written, a lot of these spirits, as I say, they still are around, is what I mentioned. I said that once before, the ancient time spirits, they are still around and they still come around, they snoop about, and they want to see exactly what you're talking about and what you're doing. They do. Oddly enough, those spirits are still around. They still linger about and roam about. I understand and I know that. So you have to be very careful. Okay, so I am going to close out this Spiritual Sense episode on Mark of the Beast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you're more than welcome to comment below. Until then, you have a safe and wonderful day. Good day.